Now, the heart to move, to properly function, it has to be very well coordinated. You know, the pump to work very well, it has to be temporally and spatially. So spatial temporal control should be well done by this conduction system of the heart. So some of the cells generate action potential with external stimulation. So what's very interesting in the heart is when you do experiment, let's say, let's assume you took out of the heart from memory of experimental animal and you put it into a proper electrolyte solution, you know what happens? The heart will beat by themselves, even if it's disconnected from the original body. So the heart do not need a brain to make their beat. It will beat by themselves. Okay, that's very interesting. That means the heart has some mechanism to generate a beating by themselves. So that's specialized part exists in our heart. So one is sitting in the right atrium. That's called sinoatrial node. So sinoatrial, or simply a sinus node, or SA node, we call it. And that SA node is a rapid natural pacemaker of the heart, which beats by itself about 60 times per minute, okay? And that SA node is there, and then the next, there's another system called atrium, between atrium and ventricle, called atrioventricular node, simply AV node, and that conducts normal electrical impulse from the atria to the ventricle about slower rate, about 40 times per minute. So how does this form our heart? Is here's a better diagram here. So sinoatrial node here is, and it's connected to this AV node, while it also goes through this left atrium. And this system allows us that this is faster. So it actually drives. SA node beats faster. And that means AV node is kind of covered by SA node because it goes much faster. But what happens if there's a SA node got problematic with a disease or certain, then the heart will stop, beating, and we have to die. So this is like plan B system, having this AV node, which has a naturally pulsing capability about slowly, like 40 beats per minute. If SA node doesn't work, AV node will take over the function. While slow, but it can still contract and making the pumping function of the heart. So this is nice, backup system in our natural heart. As I said, the heart will beat by themselves. So what about nerve from the brain? So nerve input to the heart from our nervous system, such as sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, which can increase or decrease the heartbeat. And that nerve is not used, it's not initiate the contraction, but to modulate the heartbeat. Okay, so now let's think about this cardiac conduction system and contraction of the heart. So this has designed very specially. So specialized conduction pathways allowing the signal to travel faster to certain region than the other. And there's a reason why. So first, this special system is made bundles of special fast conducting fibers. First of all, action potential is generated at the SA node, and they spread first. There's the atriums and ventricle. So atria should contract first because the role of atria is to pump the blood into the ventricle. So action potential from SA node need to spread first, both atria. And you have to make sure, so that's why this arrow is becoming darker and thicker. And then, you need to give some time until you get into this AV node. So that's designed. After a brief delay, so we call it as AV nodal delay. And So this action potential spreads to AV node. And then what happens to AV node? For this ventricle chamber to properly function as a pump, you can't pump from the top to bottom because the bottom is like this. So you have to squeeze from the bottom to top for a better pumping. So what that means is this electrical signal action potential should go faster down at the tip of the heart first. And then it starts to contract from the bottom down. This bottom is called apex. So after a brief delay, it spreads to AV node and rapidly conducts to the apex, which is the tip of the heart, the bottom of both ventricles. So these action potential, so this right side graph shows what happens to the heart cardiac myocyte. When it changes its action potential, the heart will contract. So it shows the action potential when it goes and down about 250 milliseconds. Then the heart will contract during the time. So you can ask question, why this action potential starts from here, should go one way, not the other way. And there is a trick, there's a mechanism for this, because once the heart cells will be excited, there will be this period they cannot, excite right away. So we call it as a refractory period. During the time the heart cell will contract. Okay, so, and this electrical activity is in fact, transmembrane potential change. This membrane potential change is about, let's see, minus 90 to about 10. So it's about 100 millivolts range. Remember, this property of the heart action potential actually helps us to detect any issues or problem in our heart by using electrocardiography or electrocardiogram, ECG, because that we measure the cardiac electrical activity from the surface of the body non-invasively by putting electrode on top of the body. And because that reflects the external currents around our body that originated from the heart. And that ECG signal, in fact, is only about 1 millivolt changes. But the original one at the heart is 100 millivolts. So they decay. However, we can still detect. So next time we will now enter to study more deeply about these sequences of this cycle we call as cardiac cycle. And thank you for your attention.